What's going on, everybody? It is Craig. Since it's a card topic, you don't normally see me on camera for cards. So if any of you just know my channel for me opening stuff, hi, how you doing? It's me. I got some venting to do, and I'm sure a lot of you folks have the same level of venting going on. And I don't know why the PSA stuff, the Geoff WIlson stuff, like. I work as somebody that's been into cards, honestly, since I don't know, it was born 78, 1984, 5 maybe. I did go on a little bit of a hiatus and got back in a few years ago again, but still have some of my older collection. Like, grading has always been a thing. I actually had and made money off of PSA back in the day. It was a stock CLCT. I bought it. It did some, I made a couple of thousand off it, which is pretty cool. Sadly, if I kept that, it would be worth a hell of a lot more today. But that was probably sold with like 21, 22. But PSA has had a couple of things pop up. And Geoff WIlson, every time it popped up, whether it was oh yeah, I'm glad they're giving me a giant charge for an item because it means they made my item worth a lot of money. And people defended it. He defended it. Then we had the incident where somebody sent in a bunch of cards. They got graded bunch PSA 9s. They offered to buy them back, and the person went back in and looked, and the 9s are magically turned into 10s. And it's like, oh, it was just an error. We decided to look over the work and we changed them. And if that was the only one time that happened, okay, maybe one time. But there was another one recently, and I apologize. The channel name, I think it was Junks Wax Hero. If I can go back and find it, I'll post it. It was talking about another big submission where it was over 100 cards. And the person complained, and they got regraded, and close to half of them turned out to be turned into 10s. So is it just a matter of if you're big enough and you can complain, you can get 10s, or is it a matter of PSA gets a complaint like, oh man, it was Bob again. Yeah, Bob's been off his game. Let's go check. So does that mean people who don't have the ability to call in and make a fuss, like they get screwed on 9 because Bob's having a bad day, or 8 because Bob's having a bad day, too bad? And then the thing with the selling the cards, that is super shady. And again, I hate what Geoff WIlson says. Geoff WIlson says, yeah, but that's idiotic. Look how much money that, and I'm paraphrasing, but you can look, it's not terribly far off. It's idiotic. They would never do that to themselves. And I was in a Facebook post, I made a comment on it, I was reading other people's comments, and someone said something that I think was freaking brilliant. I wish I had that Facebook username to give him credit for it, but this was not my thought, but I agreed 100% with them when they posted. Emmanuel Classe had a $20 million contract, right? Or he was on a contract making $20 million, 10 million options, 40, 50 million more coming to him, next contract, etc. He's at a baseball for $400,000, okay? I'm sure that same idea, Geoff could go, oh yeah, why would you gamble $400,000 when you make millions and millions and millions? It's because people are greedy. Why Chauncey Billups do the stuff he did? People are greedy. People want money. And I'm not going to say directly PSA is telling their graders. I actually do not believe that. I'm not that far down the rabbit hole. But if PSA just takes a couple of bad actors in there, who are like, okay, here's what we'll do. We'll grade them, we'll sell them back, and then when they get put on eBay, we know to buy those 9s because they're really 10s, bing, bang, boom, big upside. Like, that to me is not unrealistic at all. And part of me was a little like, yeah, I get it. Geoff WIlson has a thing with PSA. They've worked together before. He did videos with them, and that's why he's so defensive of them. But he won't even consider the alternative. The funny thing is, all the stuff that went on with Probstein, and the other people, like some more bad actors in the hobby, like if he was working with Probstein, he would probably say, oh, that's not true, probably isn't a thing, but he's not. So in that case, he's okay, say, like sort of alluding to how duplicitous and all that is. But the reality is, now Geoff WIlson, it came out, guess what? His company, his business, Card HQ, is going to have a PSA submission point in there. So it would have really been bad for him financially if he came out and said, yeah, PSA, really needs to stand up for themselves a little bit more, this and that. Like, there are very few people, though, that when their money is affected by something, that they don't, that they'll actually, cost themselves money by sort of speaking the truth. I will give Commonwealth Picker For those, I don't know if any of you know him. I don't know if any of you are pickers or follow pickers channels. I do. It's one of the rabbit holes I go on. There was a controversy with a company he was working with that they were underselling all their products. They're saying something with, say, 200 feet of bubble wrap, I forget, and it was really like 180. And you know what? He stopped his relationship with them. Probably cost himself money, probably cost himself opportunities. I respect that. I'm not saying Geoff WIlson should have said, I'm not working with PSA, but he absolutely should have came out and talked more about the idea of how, well, wait a second, yeah, that does look a little shady. Maybe it's people in there, not necessarily them. Instead of, honestly, some of the things he said, he legitimately made it sound like anyone who thinks there's something shady going on is stupid. He probably wouldn't say that. And again, who am I? No one's going to, the tens and tens of you that'll see this rant video. But sometimes I need to talk about stuff because it bothers me. It actually is affecting my joy of the hobby, and there's stuff that I actually wanted to send to PSA, but I'm not sending it, one, because now you don't know the grading, essentially how it works and all that, but two, the other reason I don't like it is that big upcharge, because it happens a couple of cards they have, I'm looking to get authenticated, involve Jordan, and all of a sudden there would be a huge upcharge, and financially I can't handle that, I'm sure they would go, oh, well, buy it for this, and that's also the hook. That's what they kind of do, I guess. I just don't get how a big company that's been around as long as they have can have these things come out and it's like, oh, it was a mistake. There should be full transparency, or at the very least, yeah, here's the 10 graders that we had to fire because obviously they're not doing their job. Or here's the people that were shady. Because something I did comment in that Geoff WIlson post when he was talking about how you can't, a company would never do something like that. Again, it's not the company, it's people in the company. Look at what happened with CGC. Okay? I'm a comic, I used to be a bigger comic guy. Now I have a few. But look what happened with CGC. That giant scandal. Okay? That was a major company. Okay? Things like that happened. Look at Upper Deck back in the day. Nothing they did, but autographs that they were including in their SP Legendary cuts became part of that giant scandal of all the people, of that one guy who forged tons of Mickey Mantles, tons of this guy, tons of that guy, etc. Big companies can have people in it that direct them, that make it look like they do bad things. Higher ups in those companies could do those bad things. Why? Because they think we're gullible. They think, hey, as long as we have these social media influences, turning all the sheep, telling the sheep, oh yeah, don't do that. I hate that. I hate when people... I digress. I don't know why I doing this video. I'm posting it. I'm a little bit of a rant. It just bothers the hell out of me. And there's some people too that I'm friends with that, oh yeah, the company would never do that. And it's like, in my head, it's like, why can't you consider the other? I'm not saying they did or didn't. I'm just saying one incident comes out with things being misgraded. Okay, one. A second one shortly thereafter comes out. That's really shady. I am glad, though, again, I'm just a little channel, but I'm glad the channels that do like sort of spill the beans, if you will, on this, talk about the stories on this, because otherwise I wouldn't have known, so that's why I'm doing this. Maybe a couple of people see this that might not have seen the other ones and they get it, but I honestly would, I don't know, avoid a lot of stuff with PSA, especially with bigger cards, because I guess bigger cards are probably the ones they're going to play around with more, or potentially play around with more. And again, not the company, not accusing PSA directly, but there's people suck, okay? There's absolutely the possibility of bad actors in there, just because we've seen bad actors at other companies before. Hell, look at all the businesses that have people that do embezzlement and fraud and all that. It's like, oh, that's a big business. Yeah, but the people working there are greedy. Again, the person on Facebook who said it, perfect example. Emmanuel Casse, $20 million contract so far, $10 million options following years, and probably after his options were up, he would have got even more. Now, he's never going to get another dime again playing baseball. Unless maybe he can play in Japan. I don't know. I know some of the winter leagues and some of them refuse to take him on, but maybe other places will. But he's never going to make that money he did just for $400,000. Look at that percentage of what he would have made. That's why that argument to me is somewhat idiotic. When you go, oh, hey, no, they're rich already. Why would they want a little bit of money? No, that's why. But anyway, folks, what do you think? This is one of those, I know not a ton of people are going to watch my card stuff, and that's fine. But those of you who do watch it, what is your take on this? Like, do you agree with me, or and what I'm saying agree with me is, yeah, it stinks. Something could be wrong. I'm not even holding the pitchforks, but I'm also not protecting them either. I'm like, you know what? We need more sort of work with that. PSA ultimately should never be connected with selling the cards they grade. ever. Should never happen, and then you could never have that chance. And if it's like, well, it's not fair, why can't they sell stuff? Because they grade cards. If they want to buy BGS cards and sell them, let them do it all they want. PSA stuff they grade, like, you shouldn't be able to do that. Baseball players can't gamble on baseball, and because you see what happens, it's kind of the same thing. Let me know what you think. I don't know. That's it for now. Hopefully this rant made a little bit of sense to some of you. Let me know in the comments.